At 7:06 p.m., I answered a 911 call from a storm shelter about a 6-year-old girl whose blood sugar was dropping. The caller said, "Her name is Elsie Mercer. She says her grandma left her here." Elsie is my daughter. My name is Mara Mercer. I am 34 years old, and I had been at the Cedar Rapids Emergency Communications Center for 3 hours because a tornado line had knocked out half the county. My parents were supposed to be at my house with Elsie, her insulin kit, her red medical bag, and the laminated care card I had taped to the refrigerator. Instead, they dropped her at a public shelter so they could attend my brother Caleb's award dinner. They thought the shelter sign-in sheet would make it look responsible. They thought the volunteers would cover for them. They thought nobody would match the security footage, the glucose monitor log, the banquet badge scans, and the 911 recording with my voice on it. By the time the county review ended, their names were removed from every emergency contact my child had. And my brother handed back the volunteer badge he had been so proud of. If you have ever trusted family with your child during an emergency and watched them treat it like a chore they could hand off, tell me in the comments what you would have done when the first record came in. Because I still remember the exact second I realized the child on my headset was mine. Before that night, I thought I had a difficult family. After that night, I knew I had an unsafe one. I had worked 911 for almost 9 years. I knew how bad calls sounded before the caller said the worst part. I knew the difference between panic and danger. I knew the tone people used when they were embarrassed and the tone they used when they knew a decision had crossed into something official. That night, the caller had the official tone. Her name was Rachel Kim, a nurse who volunteered with the county shelter program. She was calling from the Eastbrook Community Center, where the city had opened a storm shelter after the first siren went off. She said, "We have an unaccompanied minor, 6 years old, type 1 diabetic, continuous monitor is alarming. She says her grandmother left to go to a dinner." I had taken thousands of calls. I had never had my own heart go that cold inside my chest. Elsie was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 4. It came after 2 weeks of thirst, weight loss, and one morning where she looked at me over her cereal bowl and said, "Mommy, my legs feel empty." I took her to urgent care. They sent us straight to the hospital. 4 days later, I went home with insulin pens, test strips, a continuous glucose monitor, a red zippered medical bag, and a fear that never fully left my body. Most people think diabetes is a math problem. It is not. It is a timing problem. Food, insulin, heat, fear, running, crying, sleeping, storms, fever, all of it changes the number. A small mistake can become a big one fast. That is why Elsie's bag went everywhere. Glucose tablets in the front pocket, juice boxes in the side pouch, glucagon pen in the hard case, backup meter, alcohol wipes, printed instructions, my number, her doctor's number, the whole thing. The bag was bright red for a reason. You could see it from across a room. My parents knew that. Linda and Frank Mercer lived 12 minutes away in Marion. They were not old. They were not confused. They were not people who had never watched Elsie before. My mother was 61 and worked part-time at a credit union. My father was 64 and retired from the county roads department. They had both taken the diabetes class with me after Elsie's diagnosis. My mother could count carbs better than most adults I knew. My father knew how to use the glucose gel. They knew the rules. They just believed rules had exceptions when Caleb needed something. Caleb is my younger brother. He is 30. In our family, Caleb's schedule had always been treated like weather. Everybody adjusted around it. When he had baseball practice, I missed a choir concert. When he had senior pictures, my college move-in got pushed back a day. When he failed his first EMT exam, my mother said the house had to stay calm for a week. When I graduated from the Dispatch Academy, my father left halfway through because Caleb's truck was making a noise. I learned early that I was the capable one. That sounds like praise, until you realize it means everybody else is allowed to be fragile, and you are not. Caleb was not a bad person all the time. That made it harder. He could be funny. He could be generous when there were witnesses. He volunteered with County Emergency Response after the derecho of 2020, and he built a whole identity around being useful in a vest. By 2025, he had a blue volunteer badge, a county-issued radio for drills, and a habit of calling himself public safety adjacent. My parents ate that up. The dinner that night was the Lynn County Emergency Preparedness Banquet. Caleb was getting a Community Service Award for volunteer shelter logistics. It was not a wedding. It was not a graduation. It was not a life event. It was a plaque and a catered chicken dinner at the downtown hotel. My mother called it Caleb's night for 2 months. She bought a navy dress. My father got his suit cleaned. They talked about the banquet like the governor was coming. Then the storm line formed over western Iowa. It was June 18, 2025, a Wednesday. I was supposed to be off by 3. Elsie had been at summer day camp until noon, then with me at home, building a cardboard zoo across the living room floor. At 2:41 p.m., my phone buzzed with a mandatory callback from dispatch. Severe weather staffing protocol. All available communications staff report if safe. The first tornado warning had already hit Benton County. Lynn County was next. Power lines were down west of Cedar Rapids. 2 radio towers were cycling backup power. The center needed every trained dispatcher in a chair. I looked at Elsie. She was sitting cross-legged in the middle of construction paper, taping a cardboard fence around a stuffed giraffe. I called my neighbor Priya first. Priya is the kind of neighbor people pretend they have when they tell stories about community. She is a respiratory therapist, a single mom, and the only person besides me who had permission to dose Elsie in an emergency. But Priya was on shift at St. Luke's until 8:00 p.m. I can be there by 8:35, she said. Maybe 8:20 if the roads stay open. I said, I may need my parents until then. She paused. Priya never liked my parents. She was polite about it, but she had eyes. Do you want me to call my sister? She asked. Her sister lived 40 minutes away. Storm sirens were already possible. No, I said. Mom and Dad have done the training. It is 4 hours. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Mara, are you seeing this weather? Yes, I got called in. Oh, honey. I need you and Dad to come sit with Elsie until Priya gets off. There was a pause. Not long. Long enough. Tonight is Caleb's dinner. I know. I am asking until Priya can get here. What time? 8:30 at the latest. My mother exhaled through her nose. The dinner starts at 6:30. Mom, the county is under tornado watch. I am being ordered in. Elsie cannot stay alone. Of course not. Then can you come? She called to my father in the background. I heard him say, Caleb only gets one night. My mother came back. We will come, but Mara, you need better backup plans. I was already opening Elsie's medical drawer. I have a backup plan. I am using it. They arrived at 3:31 p.m. My father parked crooked in the driveway, like he always did when he wanted people to know he was inconvenienced. My mother came in carrying a garment bag over one arm. I looked at it. She said, It is my dress. We may have to change here. Fine. I walked them through the care card anyway. Elsie's blood sugar was 142 at 3:36. She had eaten peanut butter toast at 2:50. No correction needed. Dinner was in the fridge, chicken, rice, peas. 42 carbs if she ate the full plate. Her insulin pen was in the red bag. The backup meter was in the front pocket. If her monitor alarmed below 80, give juice and call me. If below 55, give glucose gel and call 911. If she was confused, vomiting, or not responding, glucagon, and 911. My mother held up a hand. Mara, we took the class. Then you know why I repeat it. My father said, we raised 2 kids before apps told everyone how to parent. I looked at him. Neither of us had type 1 diabetes. He looked away first. Elsie came out of the living room, holding her stuffed fox. Nana, look at my zoo. My mother's face softened. That was the part that kept me confused for years. She did love Elsie in moments. She liked braiding her hair. She liked buying her little dresses. She liked pictures where Elsie sat still and smiled. She did not like the work of keeping her safe. She kissed Elsie's head. Nana has to help Mommy tonight, okay? Elsie nodded. Because of the sirens. Because Mommy has an important job, my mother said. That almost sounded kind. Then my father checked his watch. I handed him the red bag. This stays with her. He took it with 2 fingers. Got it. I left at 3:48 p.m. At 4:12, I badged into the communications center. By 4:30, every console was lit. Police, fire, EMS, public works, storm spotters, hospital status, shelter coordination. Our supervisor, Denise Arndt, assigned me to emergency medical and shelter overflow because I had the most experience with medical triage calls. Outside, the sky had turned that flat gray-green color everybody in Iowa knows. Inside, we worked. At 4:57, my mother texted. Elsie is eating crackers and showing Dad the zoo. We are fine. I replied. Thank you. Priya will be there around 8:30. Red bag stays with Elsie. My mother sent a thumbs up. That thumbs up would end up printed in a county file. At 5:19, Caleb texted the family group. Where is everyone? Reception starts at 6. Award block at 6:40. I did not answer because I was handling a call about a car under a power line. My mother answered. At Mara's, storm callback. Caleb wrote back in 11 seconds. Are you kidding me? My father wrote. We are working on it. Caleb wrote. This is my night. My mother. We know. I did not see those messages until later. At 5:46, the first siren sounded in our zone. At 5:51, the city opened Eastbrook Community Center as a temporary shelter. The shelter was only 1.4 miles from my house. I knew that because I helped enter the location into the CAD system. At 5:58, I sent my mother one more text. Shelter open at Eastbrook if you need a basement, but stay with Elsie. Take red bag if you move. She did not respond. I told myself she was handling the weather. She was not. At 6:04 p.m., my parents pulled into the Eastbrook parking lot with Elsie in the back seat. The community center camera caught the whole thing. My father got out first. He opened the rear door. Elsie climbed out holding her stuffed fox and a purple water bottle. My mother took her by the hand. The red medical bag stayed on the floorboard behind the driver's seat. At 6:07, my mother signed the shelter intake sheet. Name, Elsie Mercer. Age, 6. Adult, Linda Mercer. Medical needs, diabetes. Emergency contact, Mara Mercer, mother working dispatch. The volunteer asked if Linda was staying. That came from the written statement later. My mother said, I am moving the car. Her mother knows she is here. The volunteer put a yellow wristband on Elsie because children got wristbands during shelter check-in. At 6:09, my mother walked Elsie to a folding table with coloring sheets. At 6:11, she bent down and said something. Elsie told me later what it was. Nana said the people in yellow vests were helpers, and she would come back after Uncle Caleb got his claps. His claps. That was how Elsie understood an award dinner. At 6:12, my parents walked out. At 6:14, their car left the shelter lot. At 6:27, their parking ticket was scanned at the downtown hotel garage. At 6:31, their banquet badges were scanned at the ballroom entrance. At 6:34, my mother posted a photo of Caleb standing beside a county banner. Caption, "So proud of our son. Some nights matter forever." At 6:38, Elsie's monitor alarmed low. The receiver was in the red medical bag. The red medical bag was in my father's car. I had the Follow app on my phone, but personal phones were kept in the side cabinet during active severe weather because the center had a policy. We could check them on break. We could not have them buzzing at the console while taking emergency traffic. At 6:43, the alarm went low again. At 6:49, it went urgent low. Elsie told Rachel, the shelter nurse, that her stomach felt funny. Rachel asked where her grown-up was. Elsie said, "Nana is with Uncle Caleb. She said I was safe here." Rachel asked where her bag was. Elsie said, "Papa has it, it is red." That was when Rachel looked at the intake sheet, looked at the empty chair beside Elsie, and started searching the room. No Linda. No Frank. No red bag. At 6:57, Rachel gave Elsie orange juice from the shelter snack box and asked another volunteer to call Linda's number from the intake sheet. No answer. At 7:03, Rachel called 911. I answered. 911, what is the address of your emergency? This is Eastbrook Community Center Shelter. We have an unaccompanied diabetic child with a dropping glucose reading. I typed as she talked. Child's age. 6. Is the child conscious and breathing? Yes, but she is shaky and pale. She says her name is Elsie Mercer. My fingers stopped on the keyboard. For 1 second, the whole room narrowed to the headset. Not because I did not understand the call. Because I understood it too well. Denise looked over from the supervisor desk. She saw my face. I said, "Repeat the name." Rachel said, "Elsie Mercer. Date of birth April 9, 2019. She says her mother is Mara." Denise was already moving. She unplugged my headset from the console and took over the call. "This is Supervisor Arndt. I have the line. Mara, step away." I stood up too fast and hit my knee on the desk. People turned. Nobody spoke. Dispatchers know the rule. When the emergency becomes yours, somebody else works it. I went to the side cabinet and grabbed my phone. 7 missed low alerts from Elsie's monitor app. 2 missed calls from Priya. 1 text from my mother at 6:16. She is at Eastbrook, safer than your house. We had to get to Caleb. My hands were so cold, I could barely unlock the screen. I called my mother. She answered on the 5th ring. I heard plates, voices, microphone feedback, banquet noise. "Mara, this is not a good time." I said, "Where's Elsie?" She sighed like I had asked a childish question. "She is at the shelter. It is full of emergency people. She is 6. And safe. Her blood sugar is dropping." Silence. Then my father in the background said, "They have nurses there." I put the call on speaker because Denise had stepped close. I said, "You left her alone." My mother lowered her voice. "Do not start. Caleb only gets 1 night. You left my diabetic child at a storm shelter without her medical bag. We did not leave her without anything. She had water. Her insulin kit is with you. Frank was going to bring it back after the award block." After the award block. Caleb's voice came through, annoyed and close. "Mara, stop making this about you. She is literally in a shelter." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my body did not know what else to do with that much rage. I said, "EMS is being sent to my daughter because you abandoned her." My mother said, Do not use that word. Denise wrote something on a sticky note and put it in front of me. Keep them talking. I said, what word should I use? We made a practical decision. My father said louder, you were working. We are allowed to have one important night. There it was. Their repeated sentence. Caleb only gets one night. We are allowed one important night. As if my child breathing and conscious was a scheduling conflict. I said, bring the red bag to Eastbrook now. My mother said, Caleb is about to go up. Denise took the phone from my hand. Her voice went flat. This is Denise Arndt, Emergency Communications Supervisor. A child under your care is receiving EMS response at Eastbrook Community Center. Bring the medical bag immediately or give me your location so an officer can retrieve it. The banquet noise went quiet. My mother said, who is this? Denise repeated herself. My father gave the hotel name. Denise signaled to the police dispatcher. 2 minutes later, an officer was sent to the hotel garage to retrieve the red bag from my parents. That was proof beat 1. Not the camera. Not the shelter sheet. The fact that the medical bag had to be recovered from the people who said my daughter was safe. At 7:21, EMS arrived at Eastbrook. At 7:27, they recorded Elsie's glucose at 54 after juice. At 7:31, they administered glucose gel. At 7:39, the officer arrived at the hotel. At 7:44, he radioed that he had the red bag. At 7:52, he delivered it to EMS at the shelter. At 8:05, Elsie was transported to Mercy Cedar Rapids for observation because she was a minor with a hypoglycemic episode and no guardian present. I know those times because I printed them later and read them until they stopped shaking in my hands. Denise drove me to the hospital herself at 8:18 after a replacement dispatcher came in from Hiawatha. The storm was still active. Branches were down on First Avenue. Traffic lights were out. Sirens kept cycling in the distance. I sat in the passenger seat with my phone in my lap and listened to dispatch traffic come through Denise's radio. At any other time, I would have been working those calls. That night, one of them had my daughter's name on it. At Mercy, a social worker named April Dunn met us outside the pediatric bay. She had a clipboard. I hated the clipboard before she said a word. Ms. Mercer, Elsie is stable. She is asking for you. Where is she? Room 6. Before you go in, I need to verify a few details. My parents were with her. That is what she said. I was at work. Mandatory emergency callback. We know. I looked at her. She said, your supervisor already faxed the callback notice. This is not about blaming you. This is about documenting who abandoned supervision. Abandoned supervision. There is a difference between a phrase that hurts and a phrase that holds. That one held. When I walked into the room, Elsie was sitting up in the bed with a warm blanket over her lap. Her stuffed fox was under her arm. Her hair was stuck to her forehead from sweat. Her eyes were too big for her face. Mommy. I crossed the room and held her. She smelled like hospital soap and orange juice. I was at the helpers, she said. I know. Nana said she would come back. I know. Did I do something wrong? That sentence almost broke me in half. I said, no, you did exactly right. You told the helper your name. You told her about your bag. You did perfect. She relaxed against me. Uncle Caleb got claps. I closed my eyes. I know. April asked Elsie a few questions with me in the room. Who brought you to the shelter? Nana and Papa. Did they stay? No, they went to Uncle Caleb's claps. Did they say when they would come back? After. Did you have your red bag? Papa had it. Did your mommy know you were alone? Elsie looked offended. Mommy would not do that. That was the first emotional receipt, even though I did not know it yet. My 6-year-old knew the truth before the adults in my family did. At 10:16 p.m., Elsie was discharged with instructions to monitor overnight. Priya met me at the hospital and drove us home because Denise had to return to the center. My parents did not come. Caleb did not come. At 10:34, my mother texted, "We will talk tomorrow when everyone is calm. You embarrassed us in front of the county table." At 10:36, my father texted, "You had no right sending police to Caleb's dinner." At 10:41, Caleb texted, "You nearly ruined the award. She was in a shelter, grow up." I saved all three. Then I blocked nobody. Not yet. People think boundaries start with blocking numbers. Mine started with preserving evidence. Priya stayed overnight. She slept on my couch in scrubs with one shoe half off and got up every 2 hours when I checked Elsie's blood sugar. At 3:10 a.m., Elsie was steady. At 5:40, she was still steady. At 7:15, she woke up and asked for toast. I made toast. Then I called a lawyer. Her name was Janice Holt. She handled custody planning, guardianship documents, and child safety cases. I had met her 2 years earlier when a dispatcher friend had to update her will after a divorce. Janice answered from her office at 8:03. "I have 10 minutes before court," she said. "Tell me the short version." I gave her the short version. She did not use all 10 minutes. At minute 4, she said, "Bring me every document, every text, every medical record, and every name. Do not delete anything. Do not argue with them by phone. Do not let them see Elsie." "Can I remove them from everything today?" "Yes." "How fast?" "Today." By noon, Priya had driven Elsie to her sister's house, where there was a basement, 2 dogs, and a nurse who understood diabetes. By 12:30, I was in Janice's office with a folder and a phone charger. She made a list on a legal pad. Pediatrician authorization. Diabetes clinic release. Summer camp pickup. Emergency contacts. Daycare backup from prior years. School registration for August. Hospital visitor list. Work emergency plan. Will. Temporary guardian designation. No contact instruction. I watched her write my parents' names one time. Then she drew a line through them. Who replaces them? Priya. Anyone else? My cousin Taran in Des Moines. She has taken the diabetes class. Good. At 2:15 p.m., I signed the first set of documents. At 2:48, Janice's assistant faxed the pediatrician. At 3:06, the diabetes clinic confirmed removal. At 3:22, the summer camp director replied in writing that Linda and Frank Mercer were no longer authorized for pickup, medical information, or emergency release. At 3:49, my HR department updated my emergency childcare plan. At 4:11, Janice sent a formal no-contact letter by certified mail and email. It did not feel dramatic. It felt like locking doors that should never have been open. That should have been the end of it. It was not. At 6:20 that evening, my mother left a voicemail. "Mara, this paperwork is cruel. We made one judgment call during a storm. Caleb only gets one night, and you turned it into a criminal matter." At 7:05, my father left one. "You are teaching Elsie that family can be thrown away." At 7:42, Caleb posted a photo from the banquet. He was holding his plaque. Caption, "Some people serve during emergencies. Some people create them." I took a screenshot. Then the real midpoint hit. The next morning, I got a call from April, the hospital's social worker. Her voice was careful. "Mara, I need you to know there has been an additional report made to DHS. I sat down at my kitchen table. Against who? Against you. For a second, I could not hear anything except the refrigerator hum. April continued. The report alleges that you instructed your parents to drop Elsie at the public shelter because you did not want to leave work. I looked at Elsie in the living room. She was building the cardboard zoo again, slower this time, with the red bag touching her knee. Who filed it? I cannot disclose the reporter through this call. But she did not have to. 10 minutes later, Caleb texted me. Maybe now the county will ask why your kid was someone else's problem during a tornado. That was when the betrayal became bigger than one unsafe choice. They were not just trying to excuse what they did. They were trying to turn the official record toward me. I called Janice. She said, "Good. Now they have moved the lie into a system with timestamps." How is that good? Because systems have records. That became the shape of the next 2 weeks. Records. The first record was the shelter intake sheet. Rachel sent it through the proper DHS channel, then Janice requested a copy. My mother's handwriting was clear. She had signed as the adult. She had marked medical needs. She had written mother at dispatch under emergency contact. She had not written that I instructed her to leave. The second record was the community center camera. Eastbrook had 4 cameras: front entrance, gym hallway, shelter registration table, parking lot. The footage showed my parents entering with Elsie at 6:04, signing at 6:07, leaving at 6:12, and driving away at 6:14. The third record was the hotel garage scan. Frank Mercer's parking ticket entered the garage at 6:27. It exited at 8:03. That mattered because my father later claimed he had only gone to the hotel to get the medical bag and was planning to return. He was not. The fourth record was the banquet badge log. The county vendor had scanned Linda, Frank, and Caleb at 6:31. Linda's photo from 6:34 showed her in the ballroom. Caleb's award block began at 6:41. My parents were at table 12 when Elsie's urgent low alarm went off. The fifth record was the glucose export. It showed 102 at 6:20, 78 at 6:38, 64 at 6:43, 53 at 6:49, and 54 when EMS arrived after juice. The sixth record was the radio log. An officer had retrieved the red medical bag from my father's car at 7:39. Body camera footage showed my father saying, "We were coming back after the award." The seventh record was the family group chat. That one came from a source I did not expect. Caleb's fiancée, Morgan, sent it to me. Morgan had been sitting beside Caleb at the banquet. She had never liked how my parents treated me, but she had stayed out of it. After the DHS report, she called me from her car. "I am sorry," she said. "For what?" "For not saying something when he told them to use the shelter." My hand tightened around the phone. "He told them." "Myra." She took a breath. "He texted your mom that Eastbrook was open and said nobody would question a kid in a shelter during a tornado warning." I closed my eyes. She sent the screenshots. 5:53 p.m. Caleb, Eastbrook is open. Drop her there if you have to. 5:54 p.m. Linda, Myra said stay with her. 5:54 p.m. Caleb, it is a shelter. That is literally what volunteers are for. 5:55 p.m. Frank, she has the diabetes bag. 5:56 p.m. Caleb, then leave it with her and come. I only get one night. 6:01 p.m. Linda, we can say Mara told us to use it if anyone asks. 6:02 p.m. Caleb, exactly. 6:03 p.m. Frank, fine. 10 minutes and we go. I read those texts 3 times. Not because they were hard to understand. Because they were simple. The people I had trusted did not panic. They planned. They chose a public shelter because it gave them cover. They chose my job because it made me look unavailable. They chose my daughter's medical condition because they assumed other people would handle the dangerous parts for them. And then they chose to lie. Janice read the screenshots and said, "This is the room." What room? The review room. We are not fighting this in your driveway or over text. We are getting every official who touched this file in one place. The county was already doing an after-action review because a child with a known medical condition had been left unaccompanied in an emergency shelter. DHS had opened a family safety assessment. The emergency management office had questions because Caleb was a registered shelter logistics volunteer, even though he had not been assigned to Eastbrook that night. Janice requested that the matters be reviewed together. The meeting was set for July 7 at 10:00 a.m. in the Lynn County Emergency Management Building. Conference Room B. Not a courtroom. Not a stage. A beige room with a long table, a projector, 2 rows of county chairs, and a recorder on a tripod. That was enough. Before we went in, Janice looked at me in the parking lot. They are going to call it a misunderstanding. It was not. I know, let the records say that. If you want to see how a calm paper trail beats a loud family story, share this story and subscribe before I take you into the review room. Because that room did what my family never expected. It made every excuse sit next to a timestamp. On the county side of the table sat Karen Voss, the emergency management coordinator. Beside her was Rachel Kim, the shelter nurse, then April Dunn from the hospital, then a DHS caseworker named Malcolm Reed, then Sergeant Havel from Cedar Rapids Police, who had retrieved the medical bag. Denise Arndt sat behind me as my supervisor and witness. On my side sat Janice and me. On the other side sat my parents, Caleb, and a lawyer my parents had hired from a firm that advertised estate planning and traffic tickets. Caleb wore his volunteer polo. That bothered me more than I expected. The logo on his chest was the same one printed on the shelter signs. Karen opened the meeting. This review concerns the supervision and medical safety of minor child Elsie Mercer during the June 18 severe weather activation, the subsequent DHS report, and potential misuse of county emergency shelter resources. My mother folded her hands. My father stared at the table. Caleb leaned back like he had been inconvenienced into a staff meeting. Karen started with the call. The room listened to Rachel's 911 call. My voice came through first. 911, what is the address of your emergency? Then Rachel. This is Eastbrook Community Center Shelter. We have an unaccompanied diabetic child with a dropping glucose reading. I stared at the table while the recording played. I had heard myself on quality review before. Every dispatcher has. I had never heard my voice stop being professional because my child's name entered the line. The recording continued until Denise took over. Karen paused it. For the record, Ms. Mercer was on duty under mandatory callback at the time of the call and was immediately removed from handling the incident due to conflict. Malcolm from DHS nodded. That one sentence erased the first lie. I had not left my child because I wanted overtime. I had been ordered to work during a county emergency, and I had arranged adult care. Karen moved to the shelter intake sheet. Rachel confirmed my mother signed it. Did Linda Mercer tell you she was leaving the building? Malcolm asked. Rachel said she told me she was moving the car. Did she return? No. Did she identify the child as unaccompanied? No. My mother's lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Mercer believed the shelter was supervised. Rachel turned to him. The shelter is supervised. It is not a drop-off childcare site for medically vulnerable children. The room went quiet. That was proof beat 2. The volunteer system had not failed. My parents had misused it. Karen pulled up the entrance footage. No audio. Just facts. My parents walking in with Elsie. My mother signing. Elsie sitting at the coloring table. My mother bending down. My parents leaving. The red medical bag not on Elsie's shoulder, not in my mother's hand, not under the table. Karen froze the parking lot frame. My father opened the driver's door. The red bag was visible on the floor behind him. My father shifted in his chair. He said, "We forgot it for a little while." Sergeant Havel opened his folder. At 7:39 p.m., I retrieved the bag from your vehicle at the hotel garage. You told me, quote, "We were coming back after the award." My father said nothing. Karen turned to the hotel records. Badge scans at 6:31. Ballroom photo at 6:34. Program schedule showing Caleb's award at 6:41. Livestream still with my parents clapping at 6:46. Elsie's glucose urgent low at 6:49. The two images sat side by side on the screen. My parents clapping. My daughter's medical alarm. Nobody had to raise their voice. The timestamps did it. That was proof beat 3. Not only had they left, they had stayed. Malcolm asked my mother, "When did you first learn Elsie required EMS support?" My mother said, "When Mara called." Denise corrected her. "When I spoke with you at 7:14, Ms. Mercer had already told you EMS was responding. You said, 'Caleb only gets one night.'" My mother looked at Denise like she had betrayed her. Denise did not blink. That call was heard by 2 supervisors and documented in the incident notes. Caleb sat forward. "This is getting ridiculous. She was never in real danger." Rachel looked at him. A glucose reading in the low 50s without her kit is real danger. But she was fine. April, the hospital's social worker, spoke for the first time. She was fine because strangers acted when her caregivers did not. That sentence landed harder than shouting. My mother started crying. I watched Malcolm write something down. Then Janice opened the group chat. Caleb's face changed before the projector even focused. He knew. He had thought the danger was the shelter footage. He had not expected Morgan's screenshots. Janice read the exchange in order. "Eastbrook is open. Drop her there if you have to. It is a shelter. That is literally what volunteers are for. I only get one night. We can say, Mara told us to use it if anyone asks." Exactly. Every line made the room smaller. Karen turned to Caleb. "Did you send these messages?" He looked at his lawyer. His lawyer did not help him. "Yes." "Were you assigned to Eastbrook Shelter that evening?" "No." "Were you acting in any official volunteer capacity?" "No." "Did you advise your parents to leave a medically vulnerable child at an emergency shelter so they could attend your award dinner?" He swallowed. "I told them it was an option." Karen said, "It was not." That was proof beat 4. The person being honored for shelter logistics had encouraged using a shelter as cover. My mother whispered, "He did not mean it that way." I looked at her then. For the first time in the room, I spoke. "You keep protecting what he meant. Nobody protected what else he needed." My mother's mouth opened. No sound came out. My father said, "Mara, we made a mistake. We are your parents. You were Elsie's caregivers. We love her. You left her." Caleb snapped, "For 1 hour." Sergeant Havel checked his notes. From 6:12 until EMS contact at 7:21 without a responsible adult. Your parents did not arrive at the hospital. They did not retrieve the child. They did not provide the medical bag until law enforcement requested it. Facts again. Quiet. Specific. Mean in the way truthful numbers are mean. Malcolm moved to the DHS report. A report was made alleging Mara Mercer instructed the grandparents to drop Elsie at Eastbrook and failed to provide medical equipment. Based on the evidence reviewed today, that allegation is unsupported. I felt my lungs open for the first time in 19 days. He continued. The safety concern is inadequate supervision by Linda and Frank Mercer, compounded by failure to provide required medical supplies and subsequent false statements. My mother covered her face. My father said, false statements is too strong. Malcolm looked at the group chat. It is accurate. Then Karen turned to Caleb. Mr. Mercer, because you are a registered county emergency response volunteer, this office has additional concerns. You used knowledge of shelter activation to advise a family member to leave an unaccompanied child at a shelter, then participated in a false explanation afterward. Caleb's face went red. I did not use anything. I just knew the shelter was open. Because you receive activation alerts. Everyone knew there was a storm. Not everyone receives volunteer logistics notifications. Karen slid a form across the table. Your emergency response volunteer status is suspended pending final review. Please surrender your badge and radio today. For the first time in my life, I saw Caleb look at my parents for help and get none. My father stared at the badge. My mother cried harder. Caleb unclipped the blue badge from his belt. It made a small plastic sound when he set it on the table. That was the consequence he understood. Not my daughter's fear. Not the ambulance. Not the hospital. The badge. Karen took it and placed it in a file tray. The County Award Committee will be notified of this review. Caleb said, You cannot take back an award because my sister is dramatic. Denise leaned forward. Her child came through my 911 line. He looked away. The meeting lasted another 40 minutes. DHS set a written safety plan that said Linda and Frank Mercer were not approved caregivers for Elsie. The hospital file was corrected. The shelter incident was classified as a supervision failure by the adults who signed her in. My work file noted that I had followed emergency callback policy and had appropriate childcare in place at the start of my shift. Janice asked that the no-contact letter be added to the DHS packet. Malcolm agreed. My parents' lawyer asked whether there was a path to supervised visits. Janice answered before I could. No. My mother looked at me. Mara, don't do this. I said, I did not do this. I am documenting what you did. She flinched. Good. Some sentences should hurt in the correct direction. When the meeting ended, nobody hugged. Nobody gave a speech. Nobody apologized. Caleb reached for his badge once, like he had forgotten it was no longer his. Karen moved the tray farther from him. That small motion was the cleanest public justice I had ever seen. Outside, the July heat was heavy. My parents followed me to the parking lot. Janice stayed at my left shoulder. My mother said, We are still her grandparents. I said, Not on paper. My father said, Paper is not family. No, but paper tells schools, hospitals, shelters, and police who is safe. My mother shook her head. You are punishing us forever for one mistake. I looked at her. You left her, then you lied. Caleb came out behind them. He was not wearing the volunteer polo anymore. He had turned it inside out and was carrying it under his arm. That told me more than an apology would have. He was not ashamed of what happened to Elsie. He was ashamed of being seen. He said, I hope you are happy. That award meant something. I said, so did her life. He had no answer for that. Janice walked me to my car. She handed me a folder before I opened the door. Temporary packet. Final certified copies come next week. Inside were the first practical receipts. DHS preliminary closure letter on the allegation against me. Safety plan excluding my parents as caregivers. Updated emergency contact confirmation from the pediatric clinic. Hospital visitor restriction. Summer camp pickup list. Work emergency plan with Priya and Taran listed. It was not one dramatic document. It was 6 plain ones. That is usually how safety looks when it finally becomes real. On July 11, the County Award Committee emailed Caleb. The Community Service Award was rescinded pending ethics review. I know because Morgan sent me a screenshot with one line under it. I should have sent the text sooner. I told her the truth. You sent them in time. She and Caleb broke up 2 weeks later. That part was not my business, except Caleb made it my business by leaving me 3 voicemails about how I had ruined his future. I saved them. Then I blocked him. My parents lasted longer. They sent letters first. My mother wrote that Elsie needed grandparents. My father wrote that I was confusing a bad night with bad people. Then they tried the pediatric clinic. On July 18, my mother walked into Elsie's diabetes clinic and asked for a copy of her care plan because she was the grandmother and backup caregiver. The receptionist checked the file. Her name did not work. That was the first time the practical receipt did its job without me in the room. The clinic manager called me afterward. We denied access and documented the attempt. I thanked her. My hands shook after I hung up, but not from fear. From relief. The wall held. On July 24, my father went to Eastbrook Community Center during a volunteer cleanup and tried to sign in with Caleb. He told the front desk he was there with county response. Karen had already sent the suspension notice. Caleb's badge did not work. Frank's name was not on the list. The same community center where my parents had left my daughter now refused to let them pass the front desk. That one felt almost too neat. But it happened. Records can be quiet for weeks and then speak at exactly the right door. After that, the calls slowed. My mother sent one last message from a new number in August. You will regret keeping Elsie from people who love her. I wrote back one sentence because Janice said one written boundary was useful. People who love her do not leave her without insulin during a tornado warning. Then I blocked that number too. Elsie started first grade on August 21. Her teacher had the updated care plan. The nurse had Priya's number. The front office had Taran's number. My parents were not listed anywhere. I walked Elsie to her classroom with the red medical bag across my shoulder. She stopped at the doorway. Mommy, do they know? Know what? That only safe people can get me. I crouched down. They know. Priya? Yes. Taran? Yes. Not Nana. Not Nana. She nodded once, like she was checking a box. Then she walked in and hung her backpack on the hook with her name over it. That was the first morning I did not feel guilty about the list. By September, the nightmares had changed. At first, Elsie would wake up crying that she could not find the red bag. Then she started dreaming about sirens. Then, slowly, the dreams got smaller. One night she woke up, came into my room and said, I had the shelter dream, but Rachel was there. Was it scary? A little, but she gave me juice. That was healing, I think. Not forgetting. Putting the right people in the memory. Rachel came by our house in October with a card Elsie had made her. She stood on our porch in jeans and a raincoat, looking embarrassed by gratitude. Elsie handed her a drawing of a woman in a yellow vest holding a juice box. Rachel cried. I did too, but only after she left. I was getting better at not breaking in front of everyone. In November, The county sent the final review summary. It was 7 pages. The allegation against me was closed as unfounded. The shelter incident was marked as improper abandonment of supervision by Linda and Frank Mercer. Caleb's emergency response volunteer status was terminated for misuse of activation information and conduct inconsistent with county safety standards. The award rescission was final. The report recommended a shelter policy change. Any child with a medical condition signed in during an emergency had to be tied to a physically present adult, not just a phone number on a sheet. I read that line twice. Elsie's fear had changed a county rule. I hated that it had to happen. I was grateful it would protect another child. That was the practical receipt. Not revenge. Not a viral post. A final report with my name cleared, their names written in the right place, and a rule that made shelters safer. The emotional receipt came later, on the first tornado watch of the next spring. April 28, 2026. Warm day. Low clouds. Weather radio chirping every few minutes. I was off work, but my body still reacted to the alert tone. Elsie heard it from the kitchen table, where she was doing math homework with a purple pencil. She looked up. I waited for fear. Instead, she slid off the chair and walked to the mudroom. She picked up the red medical bag. Then she brought it to the table and clipped the strap around the chair leg. "Bag stays with me," she said. "That's right. If you have to go to work, Priya comes." "Yes. And if the sirens go, we go downstairs together." "Yes." She thought about that. Nana is not on the paper. No. Good. She went back to her math. Just like that. No speech. No tears. No big moment for anyone else to clap for. Just my daughter, safe at the kitchen table, with the red bag clipped where it belonged. I stood there for a minute and looked at the practical things that had saved us. The laminated care card on the fridge. The updated contact list in the school folder. The county report in my desk drawer. Priya's spare key on the hook. The red medical bag beside Elsie's chair. My family used to say I made everything too serious. Maybe I did. But serious is why my daughter had glucose gel when she needed it. Serious is why the shelter had a new rule. Serious is why a receptionist could look at my mother and say no without calling me first. That evening, the storm missed us by 9 miles. The sky cleared around sunset. Elsie asked if we could chalk the driveway before bed. We went outside. She drew a shelter with a giant yellow door, a red bag, and 3 stick figures. Me, Elsie, and Priya. Then she added Rachel in a yellow vest. There was no room for my parents in the picture. She had not forgotten them. She had placed them outside the safety line. I sat on the porch step and watched her color the red bag very carefully, staying inside the lines with the focus only a 6-year-old can give to something that matters. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. I let it ring. Elsie did not look up. The call went to voicemail. I deleted it without listening. Inside the house, the weather radio was quiet. The care card was still on the fridge. The red bag was still clipped to the chair. And in a county office across town, a blue badge sat in a file instead of on my brother's belt. That was justice. Not loud. Not pretty. Just the right people losing access, the right records telling the truth, and my daughter knowing exactly who would come back for her.